Blog Talk Radio.
The Medlock Post with Richard G. Medlock begins right now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Medlock Post radio show. This is where we educate, entertain, enlighten, and empower. The views and opinions on the Medlock Post radio show are those of the host and guests. They are not necessarily the views and opinions of Blog Talk Radio, Spreaker.com, its corporations, affiliates, or any other podcast streaming services. Thank you for joining the show today, and here is your host, Richard G. Medlock.
Greetings! Yes, the Medlock Post, episode 166. Happy Birthday, America. Happy Independence Day. However you want to say it, it's correct. Today is June 30th, 2023, the last day of June and the last day of the first 6 months of 2023. Yes, we the people are one nation under God. Dedicated to that generation of resolute Americans whom we call the Founding Fathers. They created the first free people to survive as a nation in modern times. They wrote a new kind of constitution, which is now the oldest in existence. They built a new kind of commonwealth designed as a model for the whole human race. They believed it was thoroughly possible to create a new kind of civilization giving freedom, equality, and justice for all. Their first design for a free people nation was to encompass all North America, accommodating, as John Adams said, 200 to 300 million free men. They created a new cultural climate that gave wings to the human spirit. They encouraged exploration to reveal the scientific secrets of the universe. They built a free enterprise culture to encourage industry and prosperity. They gave humanity the needed ingredients for a gigantic leap of faith. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about the history of the United States today. And I have this book, I've had it for years, A Patriot's History of the United States. It's written by Larry Swikart and Michael Allen. Their fourth edition came out not too long ago, and I updated. It's a big book. It would probably be a 2-semester study, or even a 3-semester, or a whole year, like in middle school or high school. Starts at Columbus and goes through now the fourth edition, 2018. It is a true history of the United States. And some of it's not nice. I would encourage you to go on Amazon, A Patriot's History of the United States, and buy it. You can get paperback, hardbound, or ebook. Now, I have both, ebook and hardbound. And it's just good to pick up and start reading every now and then. Yes, am I promoting this book? Yes. And you're going to see why as we go through the program today, because most of my comments are from the book. So let's get into it. This is from their introduction. Is America's past a tale of racism, sexism, and bigotry? Is it the story of conquest and rape of a continent? Is U.S. history the story of white slave owners who perverted the electoral process for their own interest? Did America start with Columbus killing all the Indians, leap to Jim Crow laws, and Rockefeller crushing the workers, then finally save itself with Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal? The answer, of course, is no, 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 and no. One might never know this, however, by looking at almost any mainstream U.S. history textbook. Having taught American history in one form or another for close to 60 years between us, we are aware that, unfortunately, many students are berated with tales of the founders as self-interested politicians and slaveholders, and the icons of American industry as robber baron oppressors, and of every American foreign policy initiative as imperialistic and insensitive. At least Howard Zinn's A People History of the United States honestly represents its Marxist biases in the title. Did you catch that? Howard Zinn's book, A People's History. Now, Howard Zinn was a Marxist. His book about American history turned everything upside down and criminalized everything about America. What is most amazing and refreshing is that the past usually speaks for itself. The evidence is there for telling the great story of the American past honestly. With flaws, absolutely. With shortcomings, most definitely. But we think that an honest evaluation of the history of the United States must begin and end with the recognition that, compared to any other nation, America's past is a bright and shining light. America was and is the city on the hill, the fountain of hope, the beacon of liberty. We utterly reject my country, right or wrong. What scholar wouldn't? But in the last 30 years, academics have taken an equally destructive approach. My country, always wrong. We reject that. Instead, we remain convinced that if the story of America's past is told fairly, the result cannot be anything but a deepened patriotism, a sense of awe at the obstacles overcome, the passion invested, the blood and tears spilled, and the nation that was built. An honest review of America's past would note, among other observations, that the same founders who owned slaves instituted numerous ways, political and intellectual, to ensure that slavery could not survive, that the concern over not just property rights, but all rights, so infused American life that laws often followed the practices of the common folk rather than dictated to them, that even when the United States used her military power for dubious reasons, the ultimate result was to liberate people and bring a higher standard of living than before. That time and again, America's leaders have willingly shared power with those who had none, whether they were citizens of territories, former slaves, or disenfranchised women. And we could go on. I want to go back, comment about the founders instituted numerous ways to ensure slavery could not survive. That's one thing, we just had Juneteenth. And I think of that, and I think they're celebrating Juneteenth, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. But if it had not been for the founders, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States, when would slavery have ended? Ask yourselves that question. When would slavery have ended if the events of 1776 and 1787 did not happen until even a much later date? Just something to think about and ponder. The reason so many academics miss the real history of America is that they assume that ideas don't matter and that there is no such thing as virtue. That's correct. They don't follow the virtue line. They could not be more wrong when John D. Rockefeller said, "The common man must have kerosene, and he must have it cheap." Rockefeller was already a wealthy man with no more to gain. When Grover Cleveland vetoed an insignificant seed corn bill, he knew it would hurt him politically and that he would only win accommodation from the press and the people, but the Constitution did not permit it, and he refused. In fact, America is an exceptional nation, not because its people are inherently superior, smarter, braver, or more moral, but because it is the only nation on earth that from its founding rested on 4 pillars that no other nation shared. The first 2 pillars focused on religion and small government politics. And the second 2 are economic pillars that support the first 2. Pillars of American exceptionalism are as follows. 1. The country originated in a Christian, mostly Protestant religious tradition that valued a bottom-up church governance called congregationalism. From their first appearance in the early 1600s, Puritans believed that individual church congregations, not a church hierarchy such as a presbytery, an archbishop, or a pope, should set local church policy. Of course, heresy, deemed as ideas that were too far outside the mainstream of Puritan thinking, was not permitted. But instead of being burned at the stake, heretics in early American colonies were simply shown the door and shooed off to another place. No other Protestant nation had such an origin. The Pilgrims and the Puritans, later followed by other Congregationalists, thus instilled in the colonies, the United States, a bias toward democracy and government, of the people, by the people, and for the people. Number 2, another factor, common law, reinforced the bottom-up structures of government. Common law originated with medieval Germanic tribes, then gravitated to England before settlers brought it over to the colonies. It held that God put the law in the hearts of the people, and they in turn elected or selected rulers who reflected that general will. Let's go back to this truth, this virtue. It held that God put the law in the hearts of the people, and they in turn elected or selected rulers who reflected that general will. That general will, which the Founding Fathers called, was virtue, private virtue and public virtue. This was in direct contrast to the other European nations that followed the practice of divine right of kings, in which God placed all authority in the hands of the monarch, and people had to act accordingly. That was a top-down form of government, later cemented across Europe by Napoleon and the Napoleonic Code. Number 3. The third pillar involves the right to own property with written titles and deeds. Coming through English tradition in the Middle Ages, the respect for private property spread to the common man from the upper classes through written titles and deeds that were harder, though not impossible, for a monarch to ignore or violate. Their economic value was immense, as one's property could be used as collateral for loans, ensuring exceptional business growth not found in other parts of the world. Moreover, this pillar supported widespread respect for the law because anyone could acquire property protected by the government. Number 4, the final pillar, capitalism, came in 1776 with the publication of The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, but took until the 1790s to fully reach American shores. The free markets undergirded America's penchant for the protection of individual right and the distaste for big government, in that free markets relied on individual choice, not market direction, to advance the economy. Taken together, these 4 pillars made America truly an exceptional nation among all things of the world. As John Adams took the oath of office, he thought he heard Washington say, "I am fairly out and you are fairly in. See which of us will be the happiest." So much for protecting his own interest. Washington stepped down freely and enthusiastically, not at bayonet point. He walked away from power, as nearly each and every American president has done since. These giants knew that their actions of character mattered far more to the nation they were creating than mere temporary political positions. Let me read that again so you can let that soak in and what has happened in our government today. These giants, the Founding Fathers, knew that their actions of character mattered more to the nation they were creating than mere temporary political positions and power. The ideas they fought for together in 1776 and debated in 1787 were paramount. And that is what American history is truly about, ideas. Ideas such as all men are created equal. The United States is the last best hope on earth. And America is great because it is good. Honor counted to founding patriots like John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, Washington, and then later Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt. Character counted. Property was also important. No denying that, because with property came liberty. But virtue came first. Even J.P. Morgan, the epitome of the so-called robber baron, insisted that the first thing is character, before money, or anything else, money cannot buy it. That was J.P. Morgan. And we can apply that to a Supreme Court ruling that was made yesterday knocking down affirmative action. Thank you, Supreme Court, for upholding the Constitution. It is not surprising, then, that so many left-wing historians miss the boat and miss it and miss it and miss it to the point where they need a ferry schedule. They fail to understand what every colonial settler and every Western pioneer understood, tied to a Christian tradition, which was then tied to liberty through a widespread acceptance of common law and liberty to property preserved and protected by titles and deeds and soon by a free market. All four were needed for success, but character or virtue was the prerequisite because it put the law behind property agreements, and it set responsibility right next to liberty. And the surest way to ensure the presence of good character was to keep God at the center of one's life, community, and ultimately nation. Separation of church and state meant freedom to worship, not freedom from worship. It went back to that link between liberty and responsibility. And no one could be taken seriously who was not responsible to God. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. They, the founding fathers, the pioneers, the builders of this nation, believed those words. Liberty and responsibility. Character. Virtue. When those go missing, the four pillars that founded this country start to weaken and bend and crumble. And we need to build those pillars back up.
God done shed his grace on thee. He crowned thy good. Yes, he did. Every brotherhood from sea to shining sea. You know, I wish I had somebody to help me sing this.
Wow. Chills, folks, every time I hear him sing that. America, love it. We love it. We love America, what it stands for. And those people that are trying to tear down America, look yourselves in the mirror and say, why am I doing this? Why am I trying to destroy the greatest nation on earth? I think it's a reflection they need to take, because the ones that are trying to tear it down feel like they're doing somebody's work, and they're going to get all the praise and glory and benefits out of tearing down a great nation. Well, that's not going to happen. And also, I want to remind you of my other podcast, Sensible Truth. Did one yesterday. It was the history of the song America the Beautiful. It's a little 8-minute tale. And how many of you, the words we use today are not the original words? So go listen to Sensible Truth on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeart. What's some of my other big ones? Anyway, just do a search, Sensible Truth, Lift, Inspire, Encourage, and you'll find them. And no, we're not through yet. We have some other things to cover. Patrick Henry made the speech that concluded with his famed cry of, "Give me liberty or give me death." That was March 23rd, 1775. But there are other important passages in that speech that we should remember or focus on. Patrick Henry, who is an ancestor related to him. I need to talk about family history one day. It's a wonderful thing. He begins, "Mr. President, it is natural to man to indulge in the illusions of hope. We are apt to shut our eyes against a painful truth and listen to the song of that siren till she transforms us into beast." And folks, that's happening today as well. It actually never stopped. He continues, "Is this the part of wise men engaged in a great and arduous struggle for liberty? Are we disposed to be the number of those who, having eyes, see not, and having ears, hear not, the things which so nearly concern their temporal salvation? For my part, whatever anguish of spirit it may cost, I am willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst, and to provide for it." Patrick Henry understood that we must know the past so we are not fooled by those who wish to impose a tyrannical rule. He continues, I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, and that is the lamp of experience. I know of no way of judging of the future but by the past. And judging by the past, I wish to know that there has been in the conduct of the British ministry for the last 10 years to justify those hopes with which gentlemen have been pleased to solace themselves and the House. Is it that insidious smile with which our petition has been lately received? Trust it not, sir. It will prove a snare to your feet. Suffer not yourselves to be betrayed with a kiss. Ask yourselves how this gracious reception of our petition comports with these warlike preparations which cover our waters and darken our land. Are fleets and armies necessary to a work of love and reconciliation? Have we shown ourselves so unwilling to be reconciled that force must be called in to win back our love? Let us not deceive ourselves, sir. These are the implements of war and subjugation, the last arguments to which kings resort. He continues, gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. Let's wrap up with some sayings, my final thoughts here. Our problems today are essentially problems of the spirit. The solution is personal and national reformation. In short, it is to bring our national character ahead of our technological and material advances. Repentance is the sovereign remedy to our problems. We are rearing a generation that does not seem to understand the fundamentals of our American way of life, a generation that is no longer dedicated to the preservation. We can only appreciate freedom if we understand the comparative fruits thereof. If we truly cherish the heritage we have received, we must maintain the same virtues and character of our stalwart forebears: faith in God, courage, industry, frugality, self-reliance, and integrity. We have the obligation to maintain what those who pledge their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor gave to future generations. America is still standing because there are more of us that believe these things than don't, and will continue to stand. And long may she stand, and long may the banner wave in freedom and for purpose and for character. And that, folks, is the Medlock Post for today, June 30th, 2023. May God bless America.